Max Verstappen's test-topping late run in Bahrain left little doubt Red Bull is in a strong position as Formula One's pre-season test drew to a close, while a spin for Lewis Hamilton capped a challenging 3 days for Mercedes that the world champions have spent on the back foot. Verstappen led a Honda-powered 1-2 at the end of the test, leading AlphaTauri's rookie driver Yuki Tsunoda. Hamilton finished 5th fastest, over a second slower than the Red Bull, and Mercedes believes it's not as quick and has confessed to being confused by its low fuel work as well. So is that elusive two-team title fight finally going to happen in 2021? And what else have we learned from F1's only pre-season test? Even before his late run to top the times, Verstappen had expressed confidence Red Bull's car was in a better place than in testing last year. By the time he was pounding in fastest sector times for fun, it was clear why. The Red Bull has looked nicely hooked up most of the time in Bahrain, but on Sunday it seemed mighty. Verstappen's runs weren't without issues, but even a major wide moment through turn 11 couldn't stop him going fastest at one stage. It continued encouraging signs from earlier in the test, when Verstappen reported his car had been responding well to setup changes and that Red Bull had been achieving good mileage without any hiccups. There was more good news for Red Bull in the form of Verstappen's appraisal of its adaptation to the new 2021 rules reducing downforce at the rear. This change was cited by Hamilton as a factor in him spinning into the gravel on the second day of testing, and it seemed like this could be bad news for Red Bull given the team spent much of last season with rear-end instability as its main problem. But Verstappen said the car felt stable and inspired confidence, and he was visibly attacking the Sakir circuit's range of corners without any noticeable inhibitions. It would be unwise to declare Red Bull the favourites at this stage, but the RB16B looks like a much more sweet-handling ride than its predecessor did at the same stage 12 months ago. Mercedes is renowned for eye-popping mileage counts in testing, but this time it ends with the lowest of any team. This was a legacy of the gearbox problem that left Valtteri Bottas restricted to just 6 laps on the opening morning. That put Mercedes immediately on the back foot, and it ended the opening day quite a long way from where it needed to be. A Hamilton spin into the gravel on the second morning further reinforced the perception that the world champion team was in a weakened state. Despite a better end to the second day and strong start on the final morning, Bottas admitted he couldn't say that Mercedes had got everything done that it hoped. He did report that the car's snappy and unforgiving rear end had been calmed slightly on Sunday, but a Hamilton spin in the final hour offered evidence the problem was still there. Mercedes did end this test in better shape than it started, but it's still its least productive pre-season in this engine era and its least convincing, leading the team to conclude it's slower than Red Bull on long runs and was also confused by the lack of progress Hamilton made on lower fuel. Mercedes has rarely prioritised performance running in testing, and back in 2019 a late breakthrough allowed it to rapidly overturn a genuine deficit to Ferrari. But Mercedes has cautioned it might be too far back to do the same on this occasion. Draw your own conclusions as to whether you believe Mercedes, but at the very least it does look vulnerable. When considering who should be worried ahead of a new season, the simple answer is usually the slow and the unprepared. Well, in terms of lap counts and lap times, that surprisingly means new Aston Martin driver Sebastian Vettel. The tally of laps completed for the crop of 2021 race drivers, Roy and Asani, make for grim reading for Seb, whose preparations for life after Ferrari have been badly hit by gearbox and turbocharger problems. Vettel's tally of 117 laps across the 3 days was less than half what AlphaTauri's Pierre Gasly managed as the busiest driver in pre-season, a difference of over 400 miles. Vettel felt that left him 100 laps short of where he wanted to be, and he also hasn't completed the performance run as he and Aston focused on more fundamental work before his final day was ended early by a reported turbo issue. Vettel had a few notable names around him at the foot of the lap chart count, including usual table toppers Hamilton and Bottas, but at least they weren't trying to learn a new team, car and engine. Other drivers in the same boat as Vettel had much more productive tests. Daniel Ricciardo was very content with McLaren's work, while F1 returnee Fernando Alonso managed more than 200 laps at Alpine. Carlos Sainz Jr. said he'd mastered the basics at Ferrari, then spent 192 laps learning the team's tricks. Sergio Perez was content but not thrilled at Red Bull, happy enough with the car but admitting it would take a bit more time to get properly up to speed. But we said the unprepared and the slow are the ones who should be worried for the new season, and for clear signs of performance struggles, it's hard to look beyond Haas. The American team and its rookie driver pairing, including Formula 2 champion Mick Schumacher, appear to be heading for the difficult season many have predicted as Haas slipped towards the foot of the times as the test progressed. Our man on the ground, Ed Straw, headed trackside on the final day of testing to look out for the telltale signs of car limitations. He found few at Red Bull, which was visibly the most impressive, as Verstappen could commit to the corner, carry the speed and nail the throttle. As for Hamilton in the Mercedes, the car looked good, but never as strong as the RB16B, though one caveat to be added is that Hamilton didn't seem to be pushing as hard as Verstappen on the final day. The McLaren looked consistently good, while the Alpine gave Alonso confidence on turning, but elsewhere in the midfield pack, the Aston Martin looked a touch front-end limited, and at times the Ferrari made the drivers hesitant on turning. As for the AlphaTauri, it may not be the quickest car, but it looks like a well-balanced and consistent machine. Further back, the Alfa was in a similar class, only starting to show signs of any limit on turning once Kimi Raikkonen was pushing it properly to the limit. The Williams looked solid, with George Russell experimenting with approaches and which phase of the corner to move the inevitable compromises to while on a race run. And at Haas, Nikita Mazepin was committed but sometimes seemed to be trying to carry a little too much speed into the corner and thus compromised his exits. The aerodynamic tweaks designed to prevent downforce levels from exceeding the capabilities of the carried over tyres were always going to be critical to the 2021 cars. In particular, the triangular cut in the rear part of the floor to create an exclusion zone around the rear wheels has had a huge impact. Teams have experimented with different configurations of vanes on the surface of the floor to finesse the airflow, while the detail work at the rear of the car and also the diffuser at the back of the floor also proved to be a significant point of difference. This is very significant for downforce generation given the increased difficulty of sealing the underfloor. The need to extract every iota of downforce at the rear of the car, including via the diffuser, and to do so consistently across a range of ride heights will be key to making the cars work well to the new rules. Any shortcomings will not only cost corner speed, but also traction at corner exit. Pretty much every team referenced the battle to re-optimise the setup and rebalance the car, with some doing so more effectively than others. Come Friday practice for the Bahrain Grand Prix, doubtless there will be further floor tweaks on display. As part of the rear packaging, those teams who had the flexibility to spend tokens on this area have also modified mechanical components. That includes Red Bull, who appear to have found a way to mimic the Mercedes reverse lower wishbone configuration without having to modify the rear crash structure. The suggestions that Fernando Alonso might have lost his edge after 2 years away from F1 and approaching his 40th birthday were always unconvincing. But when Alonso suffered a broken jaw in a cycling accident last month, there were fears he might not be ready. He does have 2 titanium plates in his upper jaw that will not be removed until the end of the season. But any suspicion there was anything wrong with Alonso or that this would affect his driving was shot down the first time we saw him on a quick lap, turning in decisively with all the old confidence and car control. The Alpine A521 looks like a decent enough car too, despite the bulbous airbox, and it's in that intense midfield pack. There's nothing to say that it's going to be any stronger relative to the opposition than last year's car, but we can at least be sure that it will be good enough for Alonso to score consistent points and perhaps even nick the odd podium finish. Those are our biggest lessons from F1 testing, so give us a like if you learned something too. And with loads to talk about, we'd love to get your big questions in the comments below. And remember to subscribe if you haven't already, as we'll be back with more analysis of the big pre-season talking points in the coming days.